But I think even brands like Buck Mason or Outerknown and those kind of brands that are just done great. I love wearing this stuff. They might be a little bit high priced for a lot of people, but it's, I don't know, they seem to have found a way that people want to try their pieces. And then when they get one of those Buck Mason t-shirts that just feel like, you know, you're wearing pajamas all day. Next time they want a t-shirt, they don't mind spending a little extra because they really enjoy wearing it.
Yeah, that's true. Once you've tried it, it's very hard to go back to something less quality. We saw that with the iPhone. Once people got their hands on such a high quality device, no matter how much Apple raised the price, it was difficult to convince yourself to trade out of that.
It's funny when you describe it like that. I think I'm like today's customer in clothing where I don't think about price. I just want a new phone. I go get a new phone.
Right.
Half the time I don't even look at what the price is. Right. I don't know how I would ever switch away from an iPhone now.
Brands are facing massive market changes. Supply chain disruptions have pulled the rug out from under fast fashion. Eco-conscious consumers want more sustainable apparel, and new direct-to-consumer brands are rapidly gaining market share. When the dust settles, there'll be winners and losers. But one thing is certain, new brands are bringing new demands to suppliers. Gone are the days when most brands wanted the same thing, and typically that was lower prices. We know that new brands have a different sourcing model. But what exactly is it? I'm Jane Singer, and you're listening to A Seat at the Table. Each week, I sit down with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, and authors who share their experience, expertise, and insights into succeeding in business. To get a better understanding of what direct-to-consumer brands want or need from their suppliers, I reached out to Kevin Lynk, founder and CEO of Creare, an agency that provides design, product development, and production, and that leverages strong mill partnerships to deliver high-quality raw materials. Kevin has 2 decades of experience working with both traditional and new digital native brands. In this episode, he'll talk about who's likely to prosper in the new normal, the growing shift away from cheaper and towards better, the overlooked emergence of the new middle market, today's biggest asks from buyers, and what keeps him up at night. Before we get started, if you're looking to develop knitwear collections that will be a hit in any market, then Spin Expo is the place to go. It's the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. The fair is a rich resource featuring well-edited, high-quality collections, as well as cutting-edge technical innovation. Not to mention outstanding trend information that cannot be found anywhere else. You can learn more at spinexpo.com. That's www.spinexpo.com. There's also a link in the show notes. And check out our website. You can find all of the previous episodes of A Seat at the Table, the show notes, productivity tips, and lots of other useful information. You can find it at seat.fm. That's www.seat.fm. FM because it's a podcast. Now, let's hear what Kevin has to say about the changes that are rocking our industry. Kevin, it's great to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to getting your perspective as to what's happening in the market, particularly with the new digital native brands.
Obviously, it's the same for everyone. It's been a very challenging period, but I think we all retooled, and as did our clients and our supply partners. And I think we're coming out of this pretty well, but boy, it was not a fun period.
No, it wasn't for anybody, certainly in the apparel and retail sector. But I'm delighted that you're taking the time to speak with us today. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, and that's one of your questions was what keeps you up at night.
Right.
And for me, it's are we and our clients aware of the shifts and reacting correctly and doing the right things to be ready for what's next? And that's we have a mixed bag in that. We have in our supply chain and our clients that are they really doing the things that they need to do to understand the new world we're in? Because it's never changed at this kind of speed. I've been through some evolutionary adjustments in the industry where I would never be on an interview with a polo shirt. I wore suits and ties and cufflinks and pocket squares for 20-something years. And now I don't know if I can find a pocket square.
I think you're right when you talked about that this has been a very big disruption to the industry, bigger than we've seen in probably decades. And Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last big disruption was the advent of the fast fashion model. What do you think has changed since that?
I think fast fashion changed a segment of the market. It may have changed our mindset. It made us all feel like we have to be really quick. We have to beat Zara and H&M to the punch. But in reality, it only made us, I think, a little bit better because we did have to think speed. How are we going to condense the time in action? And can we take a fabric mill and instead of being 75 or 90 days, can we be 45 to 60? And what part of our products can we be? I think it made everyone better and smarter, but it didn't really affect us. It wasn't really who we competed against. But I think it made us better. I think it made us think differently. And that disruption was I think it was more for a younger client. And we're pretty much, I think, too high a price in general to be after the younger market anyway. But I do have a lot of friends and friendly competitors who it did make quite a difference. But that disruption was, that's a disruption that I like because that's very smart people making very smart decisions and being able to basically take over a section of the market because they did something well. This disruption is nothing was done well. It was just a disaster. But so I think fast fashion had I think it was like, that's what makes me feel good about the industry sometimes. I wasn't a big fan of fast fashion. I was a big fan of the people who created that model.
Right. The genius that they had in seeing that opportunity, figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah, they really did. It was amazing.
If you're looking at now, okay, I think you made a good point. That was something that people did out of genius or out of vision, being able to see this fast fashion model. But now we've had this COVID come through. And of course, in any crisis situation, people always have to adapt. But do you see long-term implications on this? Or in your opinion, do you feel that this pandemic is going to pass because eventually they all do and things will just go back to the way it was before? Or do you think that this is setting in motion anything that you might see to be a significant shift?
You know, we spend a lot of time talking about this, and luckily we know a lot of very intelligent people with a lot of different skill sets.
Okay.
And I think fast fashion, just on the evolution of a greener world and more better environmentally, and that doesn't help the whole model of fast fashion generally. And now with COVID, and you have these supply chain issues and countries of origin that you can no longer just go in and take these countries that you live in or you've lived in that service fast fashion and think that you can just sit in those countries and do everything there. You can't do it anymore because what happens if that country shuts because of COVID?
Right.
So supply chain issues, logistics. I think fast fashion's moment is not going to be the now. It'll exist, but it'll be boring stuff. It'll be like more about garment dye or T-shirts and so on. They're easy to make adjustments to, but when you look at style and fashion, and I think fast fashion is going to have a very tough time. And these supply chain issues we're hearing, 2022, nothing's going to change. Nothing. And you look at some of the prices on these garments, and when you now have $20,000, $25,000 containers, it's adding $2 wholesale onto a garment. What is that in retail? That's probably $10 by the time it gets to the store. That kind of changes your model.
Yeah. I think certainly if freight rates stay the way they are, that will be very impactful. I guess everybody is betting on that, and there's many different viewpoints as to what's going to happen next with freight rates. You feel that fast fashion now, because of these other fundamentals that you've touched on, being logistics particularly, and higher costs, is going to go the way of mainly becoming basics, focusing more on basics. So then what do you see filling in the rest of the market?
So I do think people will buy less, but the brands that do things well will prosper. That's always going to happen. And that's the thing. I think and I don't think the brands have to be the giants anymore, and I think that whole idea of I've got to increase my top line so that I can be bought by someone. That's going to be there, but I think it's now, we're even talking, I won't name names, but we're talking to some of our clients that are definitely newer and very successful and looking to be bought, but now they actually have to make money. So I think it's less promotion. I think that you already see that because there's not enough goods in the store, and that's a supply and demand issue. But I think, again, the whole idea of let's throw less in landfills, let's buy less, let's think more about what we buy, less but better good. I think that's here. And I think it was here to a degree, but I think it's on steroids now.
I think you made a very interesting point. And I think that a lot of brands that were starting up, trying to become big brands, that you're right, it was very much focused on top line and give me the top line and later on I can fix the bottom line. And it's interesting that you say that now there's been some shift in that. So from the point of view of the brands that you're working with, do you see as much pressure on price as before, or do you see a shift in terms of what they're asking for? I don't know if I'm explaining that too clearly.
No, it's a good question. That's something that we go through literally when we finish. That's a question I'm going to be answering to our most important client. It's funny, we have it where I'll give you an example on that one. I think that's really that's current. So we have a very important client who has some very serious supply chain issues, much more serious than even just getting containers and ships or fabric or so on. It's one of their major suppliers can no longer supply into this country for a limited time. And it's a big part of their business. So we're one of their only options, if not in reality the only option they have for a specific product, which is wrinkle-free shirts that we produce very well, and we're duty-free, right? But we're still probably their only option. So in days gone by, someone would bring us something that would be maybe, say, 500,000 shirts in a season. Now they want 1.2 million shirts. That's a huge win, but there'd always be a very heavy negotiation on price.
Right.
The question now is, let's see if we can make it all, and let's see how much we have to increase the price. So it's no longer, I'm giving you double the business, which is what you've always asked me for. And now you have it, but now you're going to have to raise my price. And we're not raising the price because we're full or anything else. It's we're going to have to take a look at what fabric prices are going to be over that season. Financing of all that fabric because you have to buy it so early. So I think when it comes to our clients, they're not even, if we're late now, they don't even ask us to pay air freight. They expect to pay the air freight. They want some cooperation if we can, or if it's our fault, of course, we pay. But price is not really the question anymore.
Wow.
It's getting the goods. Now, I think past this, I think it depends on a client that's already selling, let's say, a $98 shirt retail.
Right. And
it's forced to go to $112, $115, $125, and they're going to see their sales drop because that's a natural. Once you pass $100, that's going to happen. Are they going to do everything they can to fight back under $98 and maybe cheapen the shirt or find a different supplier, buy a different fabric? That's the question that's not been answered yet. And I also think that once they get the data on can they survive at the new price or new world, they might find that when their costs go down, they don't have to lower the price and they're actually making more profit. So that's a real question mark. I think that's why that's such a good question. So I think there's a different mindset for going forward, and price is not number one in a lot of cases.
I think that's really interesting because it's just been decades and decades, right, where the manufacturer has taken so much pressure. And the fact that now they're able to, in a sense, I don't want to say push back because they have their own problems and they've also had radical cost increases in many areas. But the fact of the matter is, it's changed a little bit, the dynamic. We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think you TDP, but hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
I think that the change is drastic, and I can't imagine being a retailer someone in a buying position who 2 years ago had all the power in the conversation. They pick up the phone, they're the boss of that conversation. And now all of a sudden they're calling around, literally in some cases, like just begging for goods.
Right.
You know, how do I get goods? And so it's like, you know, that's got to show who's really good at what they do and who's not, because now it's like, how do I actually secure goods? The whole thing has changed because when you came to supply and demand from our side of the industry, there was so much supply from so many different places. And as fast fashion made people get better and quicker, again, every time you go to a mill in China, Cambodia, Vietnam, Turkey, Ethiopia, there's Italians running all over the place teaching them how to do things.
Right.
So everyone got better.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
Even these low-cost countries, they all get pretty good at what they were doing. So it leveled that playing field from the supply side of a lot of really good suppliers. And all of a sudden, we wake up, and there's way too many of us. When you're in a purchasing or a buying position, you were in a good spot. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because you had a huge expansion of suppliers, as you were saying, and at the same time we saw a big consolidation of buyers or of volume buyers. Because we've seen a lot of indie brands come on in D2C, but because they're buying such small volumes relative to the big guys, if you were a big volume buyer, you had tremendous clout.
Right. We would basically look at the big volume buyers as a kind of a way to make our factories more efficient.
Right.
It wasn't really, we weren't really expecting to make money. We'd like to, but that wasn't really the full expectation. And then we had to pick and choose an expression that one of the guys is the CEO of CL Textiles likes to use, which is, let's pick some winners of tomorrow. Let's do our work and try to figure out who are the guys that are going to make it out of this cloud of dust and do well. And let's hitch our horse to those guys early on, even though that's not really the kind of business that we want to live in. But we need a little mixed basket of winners of tomorrow, the guys that we can make profit on, the middle size guys, and then let's keep the factory humming with the big guys.
How do you determine who might be tomorrow's winner?
It used to be tough, and it's still not so easy. But you can tell by social media, you can tell by the reaction. We buy a tremendous amount of clothing. I'm always trying brands that. My wife, luckily, is a designer, and so she's always searching for things and doing a lot of research. And we have a big network of people. We talk about what's next and what's not, who's doing well, and do we like their product, and are they consistent? And we've gotten in with some people like Untuck It, Johnny O, and people like that they're just killing it.
Yeah, that's very good. I think it's interesting to see some of these shifts that you've noted. In the end, do you feel that as we come out of this pandemic and we've seen such a big rise of these independent brands, right, of the direct-to-consumer brands, some of which, of course, are really tiny and some of which are actually fairly sizable at this point, although not as big, of course, as the big players. Do you feel that more of the total, the aggregate volume of apparel more of that will be taken up by these independent brands, or do you feel that they'll still be a tiny part of the market?
I think they're what's going to hurt some of these bigger brands more than anything, more than pandemics or supply chains or anything. When you look at people like Vuori that didn't exist 7 years ago, I think they're a 6-year-old company with $1 billion valuation, which is, I'd love to be able to say I'm proud of them, but I have nothing to do with it. But I'm really happy for these guys because they've really made something happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you look at some of the old tried and true guys that maybe COVID was good for them getting into Chapter 11, they maybe shouldn't have, and they get out of real estate that they were very fortunate to get out of, but they haven't changed their business model. So all of these guys that are coming up, they're just, it used to be that they were nibbling at them. Now they're taking big chunks. So I think the willingness and openness, and of course social media is a huge help in that, to buy new and different and younger brands, I think it's never been stronger. And it's only going to, I think, get stronger. So the big guys are just having more and more people just eating away at them. And even some of the really good retailers like Dillard's and Nordstrom's and people like that, they're open to those brands. They
Right.
want them young. They want them early now. It was like Barney's always had that spot. Let me
Right.
get that new designer. Let me own them and not let them sell anyone else so that they couldn't really grow, but I want them. Now it's like these stores are saying, you know what? Maybe I'll carve out a little bit of a bigger space now for some of these guys and give them a shot. Try them in 10 or 20 doors and see how it goes. So I think those new brands have and again, also with a lot of money out there, a lot of investors, potential investors and cheap money, I think we'll see more and more of these good brands.
I think that's an interesting point because a lot of the hype around the D2C brands, right, the indie brands, has been focused more on Gen Z or the younger millennials. But I think the fact that people, even in older generations or segments, then those very young buyers are also interested in this and are much more open to trying new brands. I think that's an interesting point that you're making because that becomes quite significant. That shows a total market shift.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think it's in all ages. It gives new designers and new brands I think a feeling that they have a shot.
Yeah.
And I think that makes people more active and aggressive.
Yeah, that's very true. And do you think that this shift away from big brands is also getting consumers away from being so focused on price? Because it's harder to compare price amongst so many different brands where there's so many different variables with each one?
I think that's absolutely true, yes. But I think that's also part of what was happening anyway, where you're getting the people who are price only and go to buy Costco and TJ Maxx and all those places. And it is a price issue. The middle disappeared, and now it's like the other people are. And it's a big segment of the market that shifted north, right? That want the better goods. So, yeah, I think that just makes that lack of the middle market disappearing. It's going to happen faster. Plenty of people lots and lots of people will look for value. And what's a better value than somewhere like Costco where you can get a really top woven shirt and wrinkle-free shirt for $17 or $18. Those value customers are there. They're not going away, but they're not really for the new brands anyway, I don't think.
Right. Do you think the new brands are perhaps becoming the new middle?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think so. I think that might be a good way to put it, actually, yeah.
Yeah, it could be, right? That people want something better. Really, there hasn't been anything better because you had to make a big leap price point, right, up to designer. So people figured, I can't really go for designer. So, well, since there's nothing else to satisfy me, I'll just buy cheap. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that progresses.
You look at brands like Psycho Bunny that have like a cool logo and it's a lot of color, and there's really Rob Godley was the founder of that. He's my closest friend, and he just said, I want to be the opposite of Polo. I want to be like a little bit cheeky, but like Polo, but something a little bit more where guys want to buy it, but I don't want it to be priced out. You get into where it's not so expensive, but you've got a super nice garment now that you can feel good about, and it's different. Not everybody has it, and but I didn't break the bank.
Right.
But I think even brands like Buck Mason and Outerknown and those kind of brands that have just done great. I love wearing the stuff. They might be a little bit high priced for a lot of people, but it's, I don't know, they seem to have found a way that people want to try their pieces. And then when they get one of those Buck Mason t-shirts that just feel like, you're wearing pajamas all day, next time they want a t-shirt, they don't mind spending that little extra because they really enjoy wearing it.
Yeah, that's true. Once you've tried it, it's very hard to go back to something less quality. We saw that with the iPhone. Once people got their hands on such a high quality device, no matter how much Apple raised the price, it was difficult to convince yourself to trade out of that.
It's funny when you describe it like that. I think I'm like today's customer in clothing, where I don't think about price. I just want a new phone. I go get a new phone.
Right.
Half the time I don't even look at what the price is. Right. I don't know how I would ever switch away from an iPhone now.
You and millions of people around the world. It was remarkable, right? The change in mobile phone buying that Apple was able to make. So when you're looking at the brands that you're working with right now, and they're looking at many different inputs, right? They're looking at fabric quality, workmanship, design. How much importance goes on actual quality of materials, or is the focus really still on the actual look of the garment?
That's a question that's dear to my heart, because I always felt like I sold quality fabrics no matter what the content was or what the end use was. And I think a good way to answer that is, I would say all of our top clients now have been very strict on their parameters of expectation. If it's going to be a stretch, it has to stretch a certain amount and recover a certain amount. If it has an interesting weave or whatever, it still has to have the tensile strength. Crocking there's such parameters that have been set up, and we've been trained by our customer, and our customers actually, I think, respect that we understand that training, that we don't show them anything that's not going to pass all of their testing, but still it's going to feel good and still going to look good and drape well. So I think the industry, again, it's back to that we talked about the Italian technicians all over the world. So many people are making better fabric, and I think it's become a given. Don't even show me something that's not going to fit what my parameters are. So the worst return retailers have are the ones that they didn't get, and the customer just doesn't come back because they feel like the garments didn't fit their expectation.
So many brands in recent years, from what I'm certainly seeing, and obviously I don't see every single brand, but a lot of the big brands, it seems that in order to meet costs, fabrics were re-engineered, right? And they became thinner.
But I think that's a key aspect when it comes to how are people going to handle not doing well? Are they going to cheapen the product by having a thinner, lighter, cheaper fabric? Or are they going to change the blend to something that's maybe not 100% of what they would have bought before? Again, I'll go back to the suit days. It used to be that everyone bought 100%, right? Then one of the bigger players decided, can't afford it. I'm going to now go to 70 wool, 30 poly. Now, it's the same weight. It probably actually wears a little better than the 100% wool, but it doesn't feel the same, and I'm not selling as high a quality product. And I saved I went from $10 a meter to $8.50, which is basically $6 a suit before duty, which is $8 a suit. And by the time it gets up to retail, that's, again, $40. So that's a way of cheapening it. But I think I'll even I'll give an example where Express, which is a big volume chain, they basically tell us, don't show us something that doesn't pass our standards. You have to put a price on the header, which now we don't have to because it changes every week. Their expectations are so clear. Don't show me something. Don't even present it to me, even if you think it's perfect for me, if it's not going to pass my standards. A couple of these brands have gone through periods of cheapening themselves, and it hurt them. Almost every time a middle or upper brand does something on the negative side, it really turns into a negative. And I don't think brands that will cheapen themselves now will get another chance. And they're demanding that we're manufacturing the fabric in an environmentally friendly way, that we're actually treating the water in a way that's not going to pollute the rivers or the groundwater. Yeah, and everything now, and it comes in every conversation, it has to feel good.
Right, yes.
Fabric has to feel good. So people want to put something on and feel comfortable.
If you're looking at buyers right now, these days, what's buyers' biggest ask? What do they want from you most?
I think there's a couple of asks, and I think they're almost equally important. One is they're asking us to do more. So they want help from beginning to end. It's not like they would, in the past, it would be they're going to give us a package of designs, colors, patterns, and so on. Here's your tech pack, and deliver the garment. Now they want us to actually say, do you think that this package looks good? Do you think our tech pack is correct? They want us to even fit things before we give them suggestions. They're asking us for more. So they want us to be more qualified in the past. And we even had one brand where we were very excited. It's a very big company, maybe the biggest in the world. And they literally sent us a couple of pictures and asked us to deliver garments to the DC. So we literally had to we had to design the collection. We had to make the tech packs. We had to get the fit models, their fit models, make the trip out west, get it all done and deliver it to them, ready to be shipped out the door. And I think there's more of that coming. And so that's why companies like ours, I think, are well positioned for the future for that kind of ask, because now that you have We had dinner with a client last night, our largest client, and one of the people was saying, we need to hire people, but the company's just not ready yet to hire people. So I have to do more. Therefore, can you do this for me? Because I just can't get to it. I'm not going to do a good job right now because I had a department of 10 people and now it's 4 people. What more can you do for me to make my life easier? So I think that's a big change. And I think those that are ready for that change, I think will do very well. And then basically it's where I think we are going to be looking at the 3D design and using that much more as a speed to market tool, design tool. So someone like Love Shack Fancy with the beautiful dresses and skirts, right? We're trying to fit into their model of pricing, and not by cheapening anything, but maybe it's a design element where less minutes, less cost, right? So if they have all these, I forget how many pin tucks, but it was a big number of what was going on in the garment. The garment was a 132-minute garment. It just takes so long. So we used 3D to basically find a way to engineer the garment and get it down to 80 minutes, let's say.
Oh, that's great.
Which is a big difference on price.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think they're asking us for solutions now. I think that's the biggest difference.
It's interesting to see that brands are now asking suppliers to do more and more of the jobs that they used to do themselves in-house. And we don't know if that'll ever go back.
I think the only fear that a lot of companies have in making that shift to suppliers like us is then they're going to be reliant on us.
Well, that's true.
Maybe another really good country or supplier or situation, a new free trade deal happens, but those companies aren't necessarily able to be set up in that model. Maybe they lose their flexibility. And I think they're right to have some fear of that happening, because companies, when they get, like you said, when they're spoon-fed something, they want that diet. They want that to continue. A lot of companies get into a system and they'll never veer. So once you've made that decision, you may be limiting yourself from other opportunities.
Yeah, that's true. It's a double-edged sword. Now, tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Creare. I think it's an interesting model.
So again, I have a fabric background.
Okay.
And so I'll never not be involved in the fabric sales. I opened Creare 13 years ago, and the whole idea was to be a little bit different of the old style of an agency, where at one point, my company, I think we had about 60 or 70 mills that we represented. And it was literally like I had 5 showrooms, and we'd just have people coming and going. We didn't really get involved in the process, and it was transactional. So when I opened Creare, I wanted to have mills at that point. I wasn't even thinking garments. Mills at that point that have either never been in the U.S. or had been here and failed, but that were financially stable and they had a design mentality. So I think what we do is we help these companies understand what the market wants, design and develop into what the market wants, get very involved all the way down to the fiber level, and now we're involved in technologies of heating, cooling, moisture, wicking, and all the rest of it. So on the fabric side of things, we tried not to be just a commodity. That didn't mean we weren't going to sell commodities, but we wanted to be someone that someone would call up and say, hey, I have an idea. Do you have something that could fit into this? So that's how we started. And then by just networking and having good friends at Joseph Bank, they turned me on to a company, CL Textiles, and we decided to open up a garment division with CL Textiles being the cornerstone of that division. And again, they had only had J. Crew as a customer, a little bit of business with Dillard's, and maybe a little bit with Levi's. So they're like, how do we grow this market? And now we're doing probably 9-10 million garments now a year. So we always did it from the ground. It's from the fabric. We're fiber first, design, develop, and not be transactional. We're trying to build a business. So when we get involved with a new client, it's not because they have something that they're trying to source a place to manufacture this with. It's, are we right for each other? Or do we have a chance of having a relationship? So our model is less transactional, more design and development, more of a product, and just trying to be more long-term in our thought process as opposed to being transactional.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's exactly what a lot of these independent brands need. They need somebody who brings to the table all the elements that you do. because I think that a lot of them are very strong in the design side of things, and probably started from design strength, right? And then need that component that really understands the manufacturing, the fabric in more depth, right? The manufacturing side of things. So I think that's great. I think that, and the fact that you're able to do all those different services, including, like you say, creating the entire garment, working from an illustration, that's incredible.
We actually enjoy it. It actually makes it, the fact that we're involved in the success, we hope, it's rewarding. And to go back to your point too, about these new brands and where they come from, they primarily come from two distinctly different histories.
Right.
Usually they're designers or people who are involved in product in a major company. They have a concept or an idea, and how do we do it? But they have no idea about timing, pricing, duty rates. How do I find a warehouse and all the rest of it? So they're looking for that sort of. In that case, they're almost the front end, and we're the back end.
Yeah.
And then you look at the people who come from totally unrelated industries. I always say when people strike it rich, they either want to be in the wine business, the restaurant business, or fashion. And you get a lot of people who we know well who have pretty important companies that have no fashion background, but they have an idea. But they know nothing about fabric or the manufacturing of garments. But boy, they can handle the back end really well and the financing and logistics, but no clue how to get the product together that's actually going to be, like, what do you mean, a testing manual? Or what are your fabric parameters? It has to be woven. That's why I think the way we've set the company up, I think it's the right model for them. We feel it's the right model for the now, especially for the up and coming brands.
It sounds like it. It really sounds like the perfect match.
I hope so. It's something you have to really look at and decide, as we spoke earlier on, are we choosing the right people to sign up with? Because when you have these brands that start with one or two people, every single item of theirs is the most important thing in their lives. And
right.
They don't stop calling. They want to be in the office every day. It takes a lot of time. So did we pick the right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But again, it used to be where we would have a type of client. Now every
right.
client is their own type.
Right.
So it really is. It's a tailor-made. How do we handle each client? And every client is different, and we have to act accordingly. Yeah,
always the case. But it sounds like, as trying as sometimes these kind of partnerships can be, it seems like a happier business relationship than a previous model, which was just pounding on price.
Yeah, pounding on price, or again, in my old company, we had a huge inventory. We'd keep a stock position, and we'd make the gambles on are we buying the right product at the right time, and do we have it available? Are we spending too much money? But now I think now when you have a really strong business, I think you've earned it.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's not just about do you have as much money as you need to buy the business. Can you weather the storms because you have so much a war chest? Now it's, I think what we do and have success with, I think we've earned. And we've earned it with our partners, with our clients, and our supply partners.
Yeah, I think you feel like you can make a difference when you're working with some of these smaller brands.
And I think what I like about a lot of these people that have come in from out of the industry is that once you help them, they're really loyal. They really feel like, you know what, I wouldn't have made it without you. Let's find a way to grow together, kind of thing. And I think that's a nice breath of fresh air compared to the heartless and transactional way we've lived for so long. And I think the mindset, I think it's a healthier mindset in general, but with all these new clients, I'd say the first question they ask is, what are your certifications? How environmentally friendly are you? What are you doing for the community? It's not just like, what's your price for this? It's, are you the right type of, does your company have the right type of DNA that matches up with ours? And I think that human side of it is becoming more and more a part of the fabric of everyday business. And that's a good sign, I think, for the future. Companies are thinking like that. And that's such a positive thought process.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting because you're right. A couple of years ago, you never would have had that question come up, right? It would have just been, like you said, what's the price? What can you do for me?
A couple of years ago, it would have been worse than that. It would have been, I'm not going to buy organic because it's going to cost more. Or recycled, it's just going to cost, whatever it was, 20% more. Not worth it. And we've had some major players in the industry tell us, it sounds good, but then I got to raise my price and I'm limited in what I can buy. So now that's totally out the window. Now it's like they want newer, better, cleaner, greener.
Yeah, so interesting. Kevin, I have just one more question. And that would be, what's your future vision for apparel manufacturing?
We're going to have real, true partnerships. I think the vision is going to be quality, design, speed. I know those are things that were always in there before, but at just a totally different level.
Yeah, very interesting. Kevin, thank you for taking the time to share so many valuable insights. It's really interesting to hear what's happening with the new digital native brands, to see this shift towards quality, towards more eco-friendly. I think what you're doing here at Creare is really great.
We think so too. Thank you, Jane. We really appreciate it.
I wish you tremendous success. If you enjoyed this episode of A Seat at the Table, join me each week when I sit down with industry leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and authors who share their expertise, experience, and insights about succeeding in business and in life. And make sure to visit Spin Expo. From trend information to technical innovation, Spin Expo is the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. The fair provides well-edited forums featuring high-quality products that are bursting with creativity. To learn more, go to spinexpo.com. That's www.spinexpo.com. You can also find the link in the show notes for this episode. And don't forget to check out our podcast website, where you can find all of the previous episodes of the Seat at the Table podcast, the show notes, news about our upcoming masterclass series, and lots of other useful information. You can find it at seat.fm. That's www.seat.fm. FM because it's a podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.